Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this morning. I've been dealing with Mel over the last little while. What a great company Barton's is. I've recently come on board as their employee assistant program provider, and I love working with companies that are so passionate about their whole being as a company. So thank you again for having me. I was in the corporate world for about 10 years in HR and management, and loved it. And decided to go back to uni to get my counselling degree, and I wanted to meld, I guess, corporate and some more private practice in my world, which I feel like I've successfully done. I opened up Eshe, which is Swahili for life. A lot of people can't say it. Even my dad still says Eshe. It's Eshe, and it's Swahili for life. And I'm really passionate about just equipping people with how to do the best life. And I guess today, when Mel asked me to speak, I thought what a great topic stress is, because whether we like to admit it or not, stress affects all of us. And in the corporate world, it does affect the bottom line, and you'll hear more about that later in the session today. But it's a really important topic. You know, it is such a part of our world, and it looks different for everyone, and to ignore it is just being ignorant. So I thought, let's bring it out in the open. I really hope today can be interactive. Throw questions at me, throw curlies at me. You know, I'm all for transparency, and I really hope today that you can walk out of here with a couple of things. One is understanding the seriousness that is stress, and then also being able to go back into your workplace and maybe have different eyes on your people and on your staff and on your teams, but even more so than that, have renewed understanding for your own self. Because I think unless we can learn about who we are and our triggers, how can we help anyone else? So there's threefold to that. So even if you get one of those, I'll be happy, all right? Does everyone know what stress is? Is there anyone that doesn't know or has never experienced stress? Put your hands up and then you can come and run the show, right? So, what is it? I love this quote. Time, money and relationships ensure that stress will always be with us. It's just a fact of life. And I love this quote, is stress is essentially reflected by the rate of all the wear and tear caused in our life. Isn't that, I just love that, because I just think, you know what, there is wear and tear in our daily life, that things just, you know, get to us and the symptoms of stress come out. But I think what's really important is that not all stress is negative. Like, some stress is really good. And the word stress, I guess, conjures up this negative connotation of it's bad and things like that, but it's actually not. There's another form of stress called eustress, which is the positive kind. You know, the exhilarating experience you get from achieving something or doing something or being something. And that's when the adrenaline pumps, you can feel it in your bones, you know. And there's some personality types that actually live like that. Stress forms that part in part of their world. But then there's some personalities that could do with a bit of kick of that, you know, like that I'm someone who actually performs really well under stress. I'm not saying it's good, you know, and I'm learning to do it better, but my natural instinct is like under the wire, under the pump, and I get my best work done. You know, it doesn't serve my body well, it doesn't serve my family well, you know, I might be, you know, not always nice, but for me, my temperament and what I've learned about myself is that, you know what, I actually do okay under stress. Then I collapse and then I have to pick myself up. But as I said, it's just about understanding who you are and what your default is. And obviously the negative kind is stress that causes distress. So things like losing, failing, overworking, not coping, loss, you know, things like that. So it is important to know that when we use that word stress, that it's not always bad, that it can really fire people up. But we have to understand people's wiring to know how to fire them up. In 2014, psychology and medicine and science are working so hand in hand, which is amazing. You know, doctors and medical research are showing more and more findings that stress is really the common denominator for so many diseases, you know, and I think we hear that and we go, yeah, but until it's actually happened to you, you don't actually really sit in that space and go, wow, you know, those headaches that I continually get, what is that? You know, like, oh, go to the doctor. We're very quick to go to doctors. Oh, you're all doctors. Go to doctors and get prescriptions and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I say to people in my practice all the time, there is a time and place for everything, and medicine is one of them. But if that is actually not the real issue, then let's not feed your body with the wrong thing. Because often one of those headaches is just stress, you know. So the latest one is that there's about 200 different chronic degenerative diseases. So this isn't just, little headaches. This is like significant diseases, and people lose their lives. The number of people that are having heart disease at such young age is frightening. Now, we can blame food, we can blame a lot of things, but it's fair to say in society, we are a society that are under the pump. We're time poor, we're resource poor, we've got a lot of, split families. So, the family of origin and the family unit is playing a huge part in people's ability to cope, back and forward. So, and financially, the economy, the pressure is on. Mortgages are huge. I had a couple in recently that 23, and they'd gone and bought a beautiful home, like we all want a beautiful home, but they had got themselves in the most exorbitant amount of debt because that's what you just do. And then their relationship was failing, and then the female got chronic fatigue, and I just sat there and I was like, wow, but there's just this pressure. They couldn't keep up, so they were going to lose the house. And they came to me because they weren't coping, and they were like, what do we do? And we just put in some strategies of, okay, what we're looking at is major stress, distress, not eustress, distress. So understanding the body system, the symptoms. So there's body, there's emotional, and there's behavioural symptoms. And I'm not sure what you're seeing in your workplace with some of your team members or some of your staff, but there is a commonality, especially with the behavioural systems of we're seeing more and more addictions. We're seeing more and more people with mental health issues. So I think, my clinical supervisor, who I see regularly, many years ago, she gave me a word, piece of golden nugget that I've always used. She said, Lisa, you need to practice curiosity with people. And at the time I was like, yeah, but practicing curiosity is just actually understanding your people, like understanding who they are and why they are the way they are. There is always a reason why people are behaving badly, if that's the right word. There's always a reason why people are overreacting emotionally. There is always that reason. In this room, I can look at all these faces and recognise that there are 101 different stories in this room right now. And what you're presenting in here is great, but you've all come from home, you've all had your different mornings, you've had your arguments with your wife the night before, you've got the pressure from, we all bring to our workplace our whole being. So to not acknowledge that and just, discipline someone over their bad behaviour or the fact that they're, having conflict in the workplace, or they're moody, or they're this, and there's a time and a place for disciplinarian stuff. I get that as a corporate environment. But just practice curiosity and start looking at some of these symptoms in your people and going, okay, what is this about, and how can we support them, if that's even an option? But then personally yourself as well, to start being more reflective of how is stress playing out in my life? What does it look like? Because there'd be some people, like my default is always the same, and other people's is always, I know when I'm stressed, and I've had to learn to see the triggers. I've had to learn, I don't want to get to that place of absolute, I've had to put in place some markers of understanding my body, my mental state, my emotional state, and going, okay, these are the signs, Lise, we're going back there again, and putting in place. If you're reflecting on your staff now, can you pick that one person that you're like, this is a repeat behaviour? Yeah. Well, if it's always ongoing, there's two things. Either it's just really bad behaviour and they've learnt that they can get away with it. And sometimes, I'm not here to make excuses for people, there is poor behaviour. Or they've had, stress is a major part of their foundation and nothing's ever been dealt with. So stress changes people, it changes personalities, whether we like it or not. You know what it's like when you're stressed, you're not the nicest. You don't speak nicely, you don't react, you're hyper vigilant, you're ready, you're ready for anything. So it fundamentally changes, and it changes out the biochemistry, So yeah, just two parts, bad behaviour, which needs to stop and needs to be addressed, or give them the benefit of the doubt. So it's important to know that stress, the root cause of stress, comes from two places, external or internal, nowhere else. So, external, some of the, moving, death, divorce, redundancy, economy, there's this ongoing external pressure of paying bills and kids in school and paying child support and and studying. We've got lots of people studying and working, trying to get more qualified so they can get more, finances down. Like there's just this ongoing, and there's this platform that's building and building and building. And at some level, that's going to impact. We are all time poor. But I say to people all the time, that's not an excuse. That is not an excuse. We have to take care of ourselves because, life is short, and it's shorter for some people because they don't deal with what's going on in their world. And some of the internal causes are just our values and beliefs. I had a client recently who came to me. She was in the government and in a government department. She'd been there for about 20-something years. And she came and her presenting problem was she was having problems in her marriage, which was fine. But as we got talking through the sessions, what came out was she was highly, highly strung, and she was highly anxious all the time. And my practice in curiosity, I just started to get more of a picture of her world. Long story short, what her root cause of why she was coming to see me was that she was working in a department with a really authoritarian boss, and it was a boss that who had come in and obviously needed to make his stamp. That experience where they like, this is my baby and I need to make it look good. So she'd been there for 20-something years, and she was not coping because she'd had a lot of freedom and she pretty much ran the show. But what was worse about that was that he started asking her to do things that went against her value system. Just little sneaky things. They were bidding for a major contract, and in one of the documents, he wanted her to write something that wasn't correct. So it wasn't massive lies, but it was deceitful, and she just could not come at it. But she was so scared of him that she didn't feel like she could say, you know what, actually I'm not doing that. That's a lie, I don't agree with it. So her internal stress was actually coming from a value and a belief system of that's wrong, but I don't know what to do. So don't underestimate in your own world, but in your staff's world, of how, their internal framework, we've all got different backgrounds, we've got different reasons why we believe things, right, wrong, truth, all of those things, they play a part in people's day-to-day operations. So for her, we had to work through giving her the strategies and tools on actually being able to say, you know what, I'll do the whole document, but I will not put that in. And she ended up doing that, and he didn't even flinch. Oh yeah, whatever. But my goodness, it had caused her so much stress because she thought she was going to lose her job. All of these things came up from that one root cause of a value system that was being rocked. Just self-image, expectations, there's so much pressure in society in general. There is a reason, well, there's many reasons, but it's a tragedy. Our mental health system and our hospital systems are absolutely buckling at the system. They are not coping with the amount of people that are struggling with so many different reasons not to be well, And why I love doing what I do is because I love empowering people with knowledge and equipping them with understanding of who they are. I think if we can't understand how we operate as a human being and as very individual people, we've really got no hope. If we're always looking out at everyone else, they should be doing this, but not actually going, you know what? How is stress impacting who I am as a person? How is stress impacting my ability to perform? How is stress impacting everything, my relationships? And how are some of my internal framework and how some of the external framework dynamics? Imagine if you had all of them. You've got external going on, plus you've got your internal. You're just you wonder why people are just like, and then people start drinking and, like the why behind the what. There's always a reason, So some of the factors, people have different backgrounds and cultures, skills and experience, personality, circumstances, As I said, we're all individuals. We can't just box people. And I know it's really difficult as managers. I remember when I was managing a company and I had, about 20-something staff, I was exhausted because everyone's so different and you felt like you're just managing people's life, and what works for one does not work for the other. And so as managers and as team leaders and as employees, it's so important that we at least get to know people. Now, we can't be everyone's best friend, and that's not what we want, but we do need to understand them, because to understand them is going to benefit the organisation and your day-to-day. My husband's an engineer and he often rings me and says, seriously, this HR people stuff is exhausting. He's like, I can't, he's like, I just want to do my job, but that person's got that and that person's got that and she's crying, I don't know what to do with him, and but that's life. That is called being in business, because we have people in business. So the sooner we learn that and the sooner that we actually invest in our people of just actually understanding and getting to know them on a personal level, it will benefit you. Okay, so workplace stress. So this, is really about just our body's response to the demands that actually exceeds people's abilities, right? So there are many people. I had another client who came to see me and she was a gun. She was amazing. She was in her late 20s. She was so ambitious. She had 3 degrees, but she was in a job where she was actually not coping. And she wasn't coping was because she didn't understand the function of what she was doing. It was a little bit left of centre for her. Highly intelligent, but she came from a background that was all about performance. And so she'd been having these performance reviews and she wasn't going that great at it because she wasn't really understanding it. She was too embarrassed to say anything. She was coming in on weekends. She was working 12-hour days because she was too awkward to say something, But she was having a physical reaction. She was getting hives. She was not, and so we need to understand when our people aren't coping and aren't meeting the demands. And rather than, saying, why aren't you? It's just like, how can we help you better? Can job demands be met? Do the workers have control, how they work? People don't want to be treated as children. People want to come to work where there's autonomy and there's flexibility and that they're treated like adults and human beings. When we employ people, we trust their ability and their skills until they show us otherwise. So the more that we can give people this freedom, and when I say freedom, you know what I mean, I'm not saying do what you want, but this freedom to be, then the stress levels will be down. It's so important to have position descriptions. That was one of the things in my HR world. I would go into organisations and I would say, that person actually does not know what their key accountabilities are, and it's causing them distress because the goalposts keep changing. And you know what it's like, especially at the exec level, it changes every week. Oh no, do this. No, this is our new focus. And the people out on the floor are like, and they're trying to catch up. And for some personality types that are very in the box and they're like, you know what, I'm a tick box person. And now all of a sudden you're putting me in another box that I don't belong. And you watch the dynamics of what happens to them. They start getting a bit more sluggish. They come in late. The attitude changes all of a sudden. They've got, things going on for them. Are your workers being rewarded? Reward and recognition is so important, and it's so important because it values people, and when we value our people, they value being there, and it changes. Communication, can't stress that enough. Honestly, people just want open, transparent, no little secret squirrel business. One of the roles I did a couple of years ago, has anyone seen that movie Up in the Air with George Clooney? So he was a big exec that would go in and sack people, basically. And I always used to say I was like the female version George Clooney in Adelaide. Not really, but I was employed to go into organisations that were literally having staff meeting with 200 people to be told we're shutting down office. So Penrice Soda last week, I in my past would have been on site. They would have delivered the information. I would have been sitting in a room. People single file come in and sit with me for me to just go, are you okay? Where's your, have you got a partner? Who can we, because it was so stressful. And I would have grown men sobbing. And I loved the job, I really did. Not because of what it was, but I loved the aspect of being able to be that person going, you know what, you're going to be okay. And then I would have follow-up appointments with them and I would hopefully, ideally get them back into work. But, that was not cool. I was not fundamentally okay with how companies did that because 9 times out of 10, most of them had heard whispers. You know what the grapevine's like, you know what Adelaide's like. Everyone knows everything. So just be aware of that communication and secrecy does not work because it causes more stress. I mean, I had guys that would say, I can never tell my wife that I've been made redundant. And I used to try and talk them through that. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, I'm just going to go out every day in my suit. And I had 2 guys that did that for 3 months. Now you imagine the internal and external stresses of that. They were the main breadwinners. Their wives had no idea. So just keep that in mind. Communication, relationships, conflicts, being treated fairly. If there's conflict, no one likes conflict. That's probably another whole workshop. No one likes conflict. None of us are equipped with a conflict. I mean, did you ever go to a class that says, right, today we're going to learn about how to do conflict? No. And in my workplace and in my practice, honestly, I feel like fundamentally one of the major things we do is help people deal with conflict at a really base level. They don't come in looking for that, but it's always about that, and it's always about breakdown in relationships or things like that. So just keep an eye out for that, because where there's conflict, there'll be stress. So these are the areas that if you've got any one of these things in your team environment at the moment, or more than one, you have stress in your world. You have stress in your workplace. You just might not know it. It might not have looked like that until today.